Well, let's do another little video here. Um, I've been going around just of late and checking out local churches. Trying to see if we can find a place that we can fit in, get along, maybe participate. Uh, it's been tough. So we've hit several churches, and we went back to a few. Uh, I'm 53 years old. Um, my conversion, religious, get saved, however you want to say it, was when I was 16. And I haven't been, the longest I've been in one church is 6 years. So most of my life I've been in and out of churches here and there. We home churched for quite a long time. And so basically, it's like a timeline where you pop back in and check things out. And what I've noticed over the years is things are getting watered down. Like, I would say, I like to say that, when Martin Luther uh, did all that he did, and at first it started out noble, and then by the end of his life, he was a Jew hater and just Pope hater and all that. But I say that was the beginning of the spirit of division, and boy, has it ever been. You have uh, denominations now, you have churches that split, and then churches split from them, splits, and split from those splits. It's just literally a spirit of division. And so, what I've noticed of late is just the opposite. In order to try promoting unity, they stand for very little, and it's just a big generality, and they don't really stand for anything other than they put the Jesus label up there. Really, at that point, you can put Buddha, Zeus. It doesn't matter because the what does it look like part of religion. There's no identity to it. So I have been kicked out of a church 3 times now in my life. Um, and I got hauled out once. And the one time I got hauled out, it was like 400. It was a lot of pretty good sized church. And I was allowed to speak. I was respected. I was allowed to speak. And I did speak up front with the microphone. And the pastor didn't like what I had to say and had me hauled out. And it was such a, what he did was wrong for many because as I was getting hauled out, people were standing up and saying, let him speak, this ain't right. I mean, it caused a massive scene. And he lost, without exaggerating, he lost like half his church that day. And I didn't get kicked out. That's the weird thing. The elders, the people that talked to me afterwards, they agreed with me. They were like, you were a fly on the wall in our elders meeting. So that was a huge mistake on his part. And I didn't get kicked out, but I did get hauled out, which cost him about half his church. Another time I got kicked out was from a different church, an apostolic church. And there was things, you know, there was things I kept my mouth shut, but like one time, communion, Lord's Supper, whatever, he tied all these promises and all these oaths to receiving the Lord's Supper, communion, and it was some big moving, emotionally moving thing. But at one point, I looked over at my wife and I said, "There's no way we can keep this. I mean, there's just no way. Even with good intentions, it's impossible." And the Bible, God warns that to not make a promise or an oath to Him that you can't keep. It's better to not promise than to promise and break it. So we chose to just not partake. Well, we were sitting in the second row. We were the only people that did not go up and take communion, and everybody noticed. So that created a scene there. And then later, I don't know, days, weeks, not days, but like weeks or maybe a month or so later, um, there was about 100 people, 100 attending, anyways. And the pastor was up screaming, and I'm not exaggerating, he was screaming at the congregation and hollering at them because the numbers were going down in church. And I mean, this went on for some time, and I finally stood up and I said, Pastor, and I finally got his attention. I said, you're hollering at the church because the numbers are go down. But I says, look at the way you're talking to the church. And he started, shut up, shut up. And he had people come take us and escort us out of church. And then the rumors flew, and people were saying that I was threatening the pastor's family, and I was abusing my abusing my wife, or beating my whatever. It's typical crap. But only one person from that church came, and that's the only reason I knew this stuff was being said about me, because is this true? And I was like, dude, I've never done that. It's like, no. So that was the second time. The third time was the same church with a different pastor, like 7 years later. They invited us to church, and we went. We went, and I think one of the triggers was the pastor was teaching that to have long hair as a man was a sin, and to have short hair as a woman was a sin. And the guy sitting behind me could see I was probably visually frustrated. And he's like, "What's the matter? What's the matter?" And I'm like, "Dude, that's just not true." I said, "It's a shame. It's a shame. It doesn't say it's a sin. Shame is not a sin." And so I'm assuming that got back to him. But nothing was done, nothing was said. And then maybe another trigger for their was they ask my daughters to be in the choir or sing in the thing, but they wanted them to take an oath, like sign some oath. And I says, no, we don't do oaths. Like the Bible says, don't let your yea be yea and your nay be nay. We don't do oaths. And so I as a father rejected that. So that caused a little bit of a stir. And then finally, I think the final straw was, and I don't know because they don't ever lay it out. They kicked me out over the phone. But I asked if they had a plan. They were meeting in a Trinitarian church. They were using their building. It was like a Trinity Luther. I don't know. It was some Trinity church. But they were using the facilities like at 2 in the afternoon or whatever on a Sunday. And so I just asked them, like, if I commit to this church, where's my dollars going to go, and what's your plan? What's your plan? Like, what am I committing to here to put my efforts into? They took offense to that. They literally like got all defensive and all that and took offense to it. I thought it was a legitimate question. So, anyways, they called me like that day and next day. It's been a while, but they called me and they says, you're going, you're out. So there's that. And then just recently here, I went to a small church. I didn't realize how small it was, but I had a connection, interacted with them. They had a tent at a public thing during a local event, just a secular local event. And so I seen them there, and I talked to them for a minute. Took their card, and I thought, hey, give them a shot. And I did. I ended up going alone. My wife, I don't know, my wife was doing something. So I ended up going alone. And I got there. It's not a very big place. It was kind of set up like very extremely casual. They had like I'd call it a bar, like a serving area bar. Of course, it's a church, so it's not a bar, but it kind of looked like it was set up kind of that way, but without alcohol. I don't mean to be disrespectful. It's just the best way to describe it. So there was like a food little area, like a couple small tables, and then the other area was like literally a living room. They had a couple couches and some chairs and tables and stuff. Very casual. And there was, I think, including myself, I counted 15 people, and that's about all the place would hold. Maybe a few more, but that's about it. And so I talked to the young man, which was the son of the pastor, and he was giving the message. So I talked to him a little bit and asked him a few questions. He was teaching on Revelation, and I asked him just a simple question if he had read the Bible cover to cover yet. Of course, he said no. And so anyways, he was kind of giving me like a recap of what they had been talking about and what he was going to talk about. And I'm not pushing King James, but I've been King James only. Um, why? That's the first Bible I was given, and that's what I read. And I've read the Bible a lot of times, and I've just found that it's a lot easier to memorize the Bible, and the wording. It's just King James is written in a poetic language. Um, itself, like they have. If you just read it, just look and you'll know what I'm talking about. But there's phonetic pronunciations and stuff. They put in italics whatever is added that's not directly in the Greek or Hebrew to enhance the meaning without like adding to the Word of God, if you believe it's the Word of God. Anyways, they I listened to him. He bounced around. He basically just grabbed verses from here and there and then interjected what he believed it meant. Um, he one of the places, I don't know, it was like Revelation 16 or something, where it's, their versions say who was and who is, and it leaves out who is to come. And then I commented about that because they were basically making a doctrine on it and the significance. And I'm like, well, my Bible doesn't say that. And they proceeded to tell me that my Bible was wrong and it's outdated and theirs is better. And I let it go. I let it go. But that was my first comment. And so then, I listened to their spiel, and basically, they don't believe there's any tribulation. It's just one day. It's the day of judgment. It's literally just one day. So I got that out of it. Also, the mark of the beast isn't actually a mark at all in any form. It's just like what you think and do and whatever. I've heard that before. And then I don't remember quite what else there was. There might have been something else. But and then before all of that, they did like communion, and he basically put everybody in a catch-22 that said that he said that if you eat of the bread and drink the wine or the symbols of those unworthily, which meant that you were unforgiving of your brother. I was like, what the heck? So he's like, don't do that. Don't you dare drink it or eat it if you have something against your brother. But then he turned right around and he says, if you don't, you're not a Christian. So I just didn't partake. I'm like, okay, like my mom and I, we don't get along very well at all. And so you could say, well, see, you just had a personal thing. That wasn't the point. The point was it was a catch-22. It's like, well, he set up the eating of it, partaking of it unworthily was very specifically unforgiveness, which is bullcrap. It's just flat out bullcrap. So that's how it all started before the Revelation thing even started. And that already set the stage for like, these guys just make crap up. I know Jesus taught that if you come to the altar, and you have something against your brother, go reconcile with your brother before you give a gift at the altar. That I understand. But the Lord's Supper, like he literally said, you guys come together, and some of you are you're eating your supper, some of you guys are drunk, and then you sit there and you do the little the Lord's the bread and the wine thing. He says you can't do that. You're partaking unworthily. You're doing it in unworthy, like an unholy fashion. He was very clear. And in no place, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, did he say, oh, if you got something against your brother, you shouldn't eat this or you're going to eat damnation? It doesn't say that. But this guy took it upon himself to interject that crap. So that set the stage. But anyways, I finally got to a point I commented. And you got to understand, this ain't like a big church service. This is just like sitting at the kitchen table or sitting in somebody's living room on the couch. Like, it's extremely casual. But I finally commented, I'm like, I said, for one thing, he's not even qualified to teach. He's young. He hasn't even read the whole Bible, and he's teaching on the book of Revelation. And you guys are literally just making stuff up. Like, you're just making stuff up. And the bottom line is they kicked me out. And but it really, it's a small group and it's like whoop-de-doo. And you could tell me, oh, that you're out of line or whatever. Look, there is a church on every freaking corner in America, just about. Now, that's exaggerating a little bit, but it ain't too far-fetched in some cities. And you can make stuff up, and nobody can tell you you're wrong. That's just the way it is today. Nobody can tell you you're wrong. I had a neighbor, very nice neighbor. He was a Jew, and very, very nice. And he was a flight instructor, and he used to take me up and teach me to fly. No cost. He had a plane membership. He was a part of a club, and he liked my family, and he liked me. So we talked, we hung out, we went out to eat. We'd fly 2-3 hours sometimes, somewhere, and he'd teach me, and I'd navigate the whole thing. And we'd land and we'd eat lunch, whatever. And he was just a very nice man. So one day I asked him about, his religious beliefs. And apparently he spoke and read Hebrew. He's read the Torah or the Mishnah and all that stuff. But I asked him, I said, what's your religious beliefs? And I was really shocked. He said, I look at it this way. He said, it's like you and I arguing about my imaginary friend is stronger than your imaginary friend. And that's where he left it. And I never forgot that. I thought, wow, man, he's really right. And so that's kind of the situation we have in church today. Is we've got just in English alone, there's over 200 versions, translations, or paraphrases of the Bible. You can't spin something that many times and it all say the same thing. You just can't. So you've got that issue. You've got all these denominations, sects, cults, variations, whatever, Bible studies. Like, everybody and your brother is running around acting like they're an authority on the Bible. So we went from, basically the Catholic Church. They were the authority. Everything was in Latin. And you were at the mercy of the church leaders, and what they said went. And now it's just the opposite. Everybody thinks they're a scholar. Google makes people think they're smarter than they are, and they're not. So if somebody teaches that Jesus is an alien, angels are pygmies, and demons are black people, I don't mean to be racist when I said that. I could have just said, well, okay, white people, white demons, all right? It's just, who is to say, how can you prove they're wrong? You could say, well, the Bible doesn't say that. It says who? People spiritualize the words. They claim divine revelation. They claim that stuff is spiritual and symbolic, and they literally make crap up. And so the Bible doesn't reinforce what people believe. In other words, they don't get their beliefs from the Bible today, most. They just use the Bible as a put your hand in the Bible and swear after me. They don't read it. They just, kind of that type of thing. So when we hit this situation where we are now, is like, if God just remains the invisible man, and my invisible man is stronger than your invisible man, how can you prove otherwise? How can you prove it? You can't. Unless God intervenes, assuming there is a God, unless God intervenes and or empowers somebody or a group of people with miraculous abilities to prove and verify that what they're saying is from Him, this stuff is just going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. And unless you go along with whatever group you're in, you're going to get kicked out too.